The following story is true. When Father Patrick arrived at his new parish on Maundy, Thursday, and walked into the sanctuary, he made a rather startling discovery. Instead of bowls and towels for the washing of feet, there were shoe shine boxes for the polishing of shoes. So apparently at some point in the congregation's history, it had been determined that shining shoes would be a perfectly good substitute for foot washing. It would capture the essence of Jesus' example of humble servanthood, but it was less invasive. So after pondering what to do about this situation, Father Patrick decided to replace the shoe shine boxes with bowls and towels. And in less time than it took to cry Kyrie eleison, a liturgical mutiny erupted in response to Father Patrick's actions. The head of the altar guild let the priest know that she would be wearing pantyhose the first day of the Triduum. Following her lead, the other women of the parish also showed up on Maundy Thursday wearing that indispensable wonder fabric that minimizes bulges, hides varicose veins, and, well, makes a woman more polished and put together. So, protected by the great pantyhose barrier, the women could observe Maundy Thursday in safety, thanks to the bold steps they had taken to create some sensible boundaries between themselves, their neighbors, and Jesus. Well, while the shoe shine box advocates and the pantyhose protesters refused to have their feet washed, I once did something worse. I left a pair of feet unwashed. Yes, you got it, Santi, smart kid. It happened during my first call, when the organist of the church took exception to an Episcopal prayer I had used on the Day of Christian Unity. She was convinced that I had committed unforgivable heresy, and she completely refused to meet with me or talk about the matter. And instead, she quickly went to work and assembled a very toxic posse of people in the congregation and went to war. This went on for months. And soon the situation obviously went from bad to worse. The church had not been immunized against an attack of this scope. And I'm sorry to tell you that in 35 years of ministry, I have had my chance, as most pastors have had a chance, to deal with some difficult people. But I've never, in 35 years, ever encountered anyone as vicious and toxic as this woman. So, because the church had not been immunized against an attack of this scope again, we needed an antidote. We needed it desperately. And finally, the first potential antidote appeared for us on Maundy Thursday. And as I sat there and I listened to the quiet splashing of water and watched people lifting feet, receiving feet, washing feet, I could tell that this ritual had become a deeply moving experience for everybody who would come, even some people who did this or received this for the first time in their lives. Well, finally, when the ritual came to a close, I took the bowl and the towels, and I walked up the stairs, and then suddenly a terrifying word appeared in my brain: wash her feet. Her being the organist. And my heart was just pounding wildly. I said, nope, I can't do this. She publicly and rudely refuses to share the peace with me in front of everybody else in the parish. And she could probably turn my invitation to wash her feet as an admission on my part that I had indeed committed theological heresy and was therefore also guilty of pastoral wrongdoing. Well, given the level of her hostility and the brazenness of her behavior, I also thought, if I do this, what's going to happen? This woman is capable of yelling, screaming at me, stomping off, and then wrecking the service. And of course, I felt an enormous amount of responsibility for the service that we had all created. So I convinced myself that even if I carried the bowl and the towels to the organ, she would refuse my offer to wash her feet. And in the split second it took me to decide what to do, I turned away from the organ and made a beeline to the sacristy. And by failing to follow Jesus' example, and by failing to ask the organist if she would be willing to have her feet washed, I completely bypassed the heart and the whole point of this ritual. And I should have known better as a pastor. It was her place to decide how she would respond to the invitation. It was not mine. That was not my decision. And this is a line Jesus never crossed with his disciples. Jesus didn't leave anyone's feet unwashed. He washed them all. He washed the feet of the people who never understood him. He washed the feet of the people who fell asleep when he needed him in the Garden of Gethsemane. He washed the feet of the person who would soon deny him, and he washed the feet of the one who would betray him. Jesus did not let anything hinder the disciples' experience of God's radical, self-giving love. And then after he washed and dried the last foot, then he threw him yet another curveball, as we heard in our reading. Do you know what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right. That's what I am. And so if I, as your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. For I've set you an example that you should do as I have done to you. And I tell you, the servants are not greater than the master, nor the messengers greater than the one who sent them. And if you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. Well, following Jesus' example is not just imitation. It is, as Gail R. O'Day points out, a decision to leave ourselves in Jesus' hands. It is a decision to enter into a relationship with Jesus on his terms and to allow our relationship with Jesus Christ to be defined solely by the love of God. So the rituals of Maundy Thursday, washing feet, sharing the peace, coming to the table of grace, these are not just religious traditions that we all celebrate once a year. They are much more. These things are permeable spiritual membranes between Jesus, ourselves, and others. Through these simple rituals, Jesus strengthens our spiritual immune systems. He delivers us from evil. He preserves us all from spiritual amnesia, and he deepens our capacity to love one another. And so when we come to church, all of us, on Maundy Thursday, we bring all our imperfections with us. We know that not all is well in our lives. We know that there are parts of us that are broken. We know that some of our relations are troubled, and in some cases we have no idea how to bridge that gap or repair the damage that has been done. We know these things. We can also see ourselves responding just like the disciples when the cost of following Jesus feels like it's becoming just a little too steep for us. And while we may laugh at the shoe-shine box people and the pantyhose protesters, we would do well to examine our own strategies for diluting discipleship and to keep Jesus from asking too much from us. And then, as for difficult, toxic, challenging situations like the one I experienced with the organist on Maundy Thursday, there are no set formulas to follow. There's only a question and a request. The question, well, Lord, what should I do in this situation? And hopefully, if we're listening to him, then there's a request. Okay, then give me the grace and the power to do what you have asked me to do. On Maundy, Thursday, Jesus comes to us all, as he came to the disciples as a servant, showing us by example how to become permeable membranes of God's grace through acts of humble service like the washing of feet, which is why his instruction that the disciples wash another's feet was a mandate and not just a friendly suggestion. Amen.